It's great to be back with you all. I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be doing this semester. Let me tell you from the outset that it is pretty close to 100% different from what we did last semester. Okay, last semester was all about writing, and our goal was to help you become a better writer, to help you tune into being concise with your writing, not wasting words, not saying unnecessary words, making sure that you were writing grammatically complete and correct sentences and paragraphs all the time, putting together a unified research paper. Um, Lots of you didn't do a great job on documenting in the research paper, and maybe someday later on we'll touch a little bit upon that topic. Maybe we will and maybe we won't. Suffice it to say that many of you missed out on the idea that in writing a research paper, you're supposed to individually document each idea that you take from somebody else, not just the book or work that it comes from, but the specific place in that work. Some of you got that idea, but not all of you. Um, and so it goes. So we'll touch upon that, but that's not really what we're all about. We're all about literature this semester, okay? And let me tell you from the beginning that my biggest belief in literature is this: that literature only has meaning if it has meaning for you, the reader, okay? What does that mean? That means that we want each of us to personally relate to the piece of literature. We want each of us to allow ourselves to become involved in that piece of literature. So we've all read pieces of literature for just the story, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But anybody can do that. You guys are, first of all, you're in, an elite school, um, and you're a very bright bunch of individuals, and so you need to be able to do more than just look at the facts. Just look at the facts is like watching a TV show, and um, I generally think of most stuff that's on a TV as um, for the sixth grade kind of mentality. Okay, my mother used to call a television an idiot box because most of the time it takes no thinking. Um, and to some degree, reading just for what happens in a story is the same thing. It's the kind of thing that anybody can do, and you guys are all better than that. You guys are all brighter than that. So we're going to be looking for you, yes, to know what's going on in stories, certainly, but we never want you to be reading stories um, as if you're studying for a test, okay? We want you to read stories as kind of a way of delving into something that somehow might relate to you or somehow might relate to the world around you. Even if that story is set in a very different time and place, characters in literature are all based upon an author's thoughts, feelings, dreams, okay? And so they are based upon certain human kinds of things. So pretty much everything that's written is based upon human qualities. So literature should be a way for you to explore your own humanity, your own thoughts, your own world, as well as the world of others. So we'll be looking for you to be doing more than just telling us what happens in a story. We'll be looking for you to know what happens in a story for sure, but also to know why. Okay. One of the things that you should be asking yourself constantly is lots of questions, but you should be asking yourself why, or the five things about news reporting. Okay, who, what, when, where, why. Well, that's kind of what you should be doing when you're reading something too. So yeah, read things for the story, but we're going to be wanting you to read things that are much more personal, maybe much more involved, much more. If I were in this situation, or is there some way I can relate to this, or why did that person do that? Okay, or why didn't that person do this instead? Or was the author trying to just get us to think in a certain direction? Or was the author trying to open different doors for us? So, reading literature should be a way to delve much deeper than just the story. Okay? And we're going to be wanting you to do that all semester long. So, question, question, question. Okay? I had lots of years of Jesuit education, and one of the things that the Jesuits emphasize is question everything. Because by questioning everything, first of all, you get to understand it better. Secondly, you get to understand yourself better. You get a little bit further into yourself if you question everything. So even in your religion, okay? Yes, our religion has an awful lot of this is the way it is, except that what we should be doing when we're accepting that this is the way it is, but why is it that way? Okay? Because when we ask, but why is it that way, and we come to understand that, then we can really know what that religion is all about, why it makes sense. You know, why is it important to us that Christ rose from the dead? Okay, well, let's think about that. Does it prove something? Okay, or why does our church say to us that? Oh, I don't know. I don't have to come up with any specifics, but each one, there are reasons behind, and when we understand those reasons, we no longer fight them. We can understand them because they're all logical. Well, that's how reading a story should be. Okay, what happens in that story? Why does the person act like this? Um, and what is the author trying? Is the author necessarily trying to make us see something, or is the author just trying to get us to think? All of us have had literature courses and teachers where the teacher wants us to be able to find a specific meaning in a story. We're not going to have that here. One of the great authors, and I'll be honest, I can't remember which one it was, stated a few years after he wrote something significant that when he wrote it, he knew what he meant. And when he wrote it, God knew what he meant. But now, a few years later, there's only one. There's not even two that knows what he meant. There's only one, and that's God. Because that writer's person has changed. So when I wrote this, there were two people that knew what I meant, God and myself. But now, only God is the one that remembers because my life has changed. My life has taken me into different directions. So probably most of you have read pieces of literature at one point in your life when you were in 8th grade or something, and you reread that same story when you were in 11th grade, and it gave you a little bit of a different take on it. You thought differently because you weren't the same person at 16 that you were at 13. We all continue to grow. That's why literature only has meaning for us as readers in what it means to us individually. Okay? So, does that mean that any interpretation you come up with for a piece of literature is going to be correct? No, it doesn't mean that. That's not what I'm saying. But for every interpretation, you should be able to some degree, justify it. This is what I think about it, and here's why. Here's the things in it. that caused me to think this. Okay, so so that's what we want you to do, is not just be reading, but be thinking, because a big part of what we're trying to do in this course is expand your ability to think, expand your ability to, I hesitate to use the word diagnose because it means there's a specific meaning you should find, but to look into things, okay, to think about them, to contemplate them, again, to see how they might relate to you. So we're already talking about two different levels of reading literature. One for the things in the story itself, and then secondly, for how it relates to me. And then, if you're really a, a deep diving individual, and not everybody is, but if you're really a deep diving individual, you may want to look at, are there psychological reasons behind all of this? Is there something in the character's psyche that author wants me to see and accept or reject or at least question? Okay, so there's a kind of psychological analysis. I mean, certainly there's simpler analysis, and that we'll be talking about those simpler analysis things week by week by week. So we'll talk about character development. We'll talk about setting. We'll talk about irony. We'll talk about tone. We'll talk about so many different attributes of literature to make sure that you know what each of those is, and so you can find them. Because something like setting, right away you want to say, well, that's place, except place is only a small part of setting, okay? Setting is lots bigger than that. And what does character analysis mean? We'll delve into that in detail too. It is this character the same person at the end of the story that he was at the beginning of the story? Or did he change? And what changed him? Okay? Sometimes we see characters who are one way at the beginning of the story, and then they become something a little different, but by the end of the story, they've kind of rotated back to where they started, and so we'll be talking about things like that, okay? So that's a kind of formal analysis that we'll be going through step by step by step, as I said, with setting and plot and character development and tone and irony and all of these attributes of literature that we'll be talking about through the course of the semester. But then, as I say, there's a deeper thing, For instance, death is a common topic in literature, okay? Why? Well, it affects all of us. But the way that we react to it is personal. Many of us are frightened of death. Most of us are frightened of death. Why? Some different feelings from others. Okay, so that's something. One kind of thing that we might want to think about. Okay, and we'll be talking about a piece of literature actually later on this week, assuming that we meet both Tuesday and Thursday this week. We'll be talking about something later on this week where death will be pictured as a woman. And I'll want you to think about why death is pictured as a woman. And we'll talk about that in detail when we get it, okay? So we can get analysis that is analytical and psychological. And we can look at things that are conscious. We can look at things that we might term as unconscious, so things that just happen because, so they're unconscious. Where conscious, we deliberately choose them. We can talk about things that are pre-conscious. So, you might say the way we act most of the time is kind of pre-conscious, like the things that are going on in us. We've kind of been taught different things. We've learned things through our own experience, okay? So this is all a significant part of literature, okay? Now, we're going to be doing a fairly broad range of literature, but as I mentioned to you last semester, you won't be buying a book this semester because everything that we'll be doing will be, you'll be able to access online. Okay? So, it just makes sense to me rather than have you spend $50 to $100 for the textbook. You could buy the textbook for $100. You can rent it, I think, for $60. Okay, but rather than have you spend that money, we can access everything on here, and then I will do my best to fill you in on what the themes are that we're delving into, so that you have a little bit of what you might be looking for when we're in literature. Now, pay close attention to what I'm going to say to you now, also. Okay. Frequently, we're going to have quizzes in class. Okay? Frequently, we are. And if you're absent, you're going to get a 0 on that quiz unless you texted me before 9 o'clock that morning to tell me that you're sick. Okay? Other than that, I want you in class and I want you prepared. And if you're not in class and prepared, then on that quiz, you'll get a 0. Okay? So what am I saying? I want you to read the stuff that I assign you. Okay? Because we can't grow from each other's literary experiences if we haven't read the material that we're supposed to read. So you need to be able to grow from what other people say. You need to agree or disagree. So, if so and so says such and such, and you haven't read the story, well, you don't know if you'd agree with that or not. But if you've read this piece of literature, then you'll know that you could agree or disagree with it or partially agree, and you'll know why. Okay? So doing the assignment is really important. I will tell you this, the assignments in general are not going to be really long. Okay? But very few times will I be giving you time in class to read them. Very few times. So always have your computer with you, okay? And if something happens to your computer, then make sure the office gets it repaired for you ASAP. I'm guessing that most of you have access to a computer at home. I'm not sure of that, but most of you have phones. I'm sure you all have phones, actually, because you all gave me your cell numbers. So you'll be able to access on your phone if you don't have a computer at home, and read it on your phone. So therefore, everybody should have access to all the material all the time. You will probably, during the course of the semester, have to write 3 essays about different pieces of literature. And we do that because the best way to start a discussion for somebody, I don't want them all to come from me, because then you're only hearing my interpretations, and I don't want you to hear my interpretations first. We want to save those till the last. I want to hear your interpretations first, okay? So when you have an essay to write, we'll look for you to talk about a piece of literature and give your ideas about that piece of literature. And then we'll use that as a springboard for discussion in the class to see if people agree or disagree. So you're going to get the chance to say what you think, okay? And if you don't show up on a day when one of your essays is due, you already know what your grade's going to be, okay? Now, if you had it done and you're ill, then make sure you email it to me the night before or the morning of. Frequently, I don't really check out my email before your class, but I can do that if you email it to me that morning, okay? But you can't just not be there. So whenever you're not going to be there, I need a text from you, or you get a 0 for that day's class, okay? That's not difficult. I'll make sure you all have my text number. I'll give it to you again now, 716-861-8648. Make sure you have that. Feel free to use it. And I am going to try to set up a text chain for the whole class, so that if something happens and, say, let's say that I can't be there someday, I and I know it the night before, I can text you so that you don't spend time trying to prepare for a class when I'm not going to be there. Okay, so I'd like to set up a text chain with it. I will tell you this: we had a text chain last year; it worked beautifully, and now those guys on the text chain, as they're watching the Bills games, they text me comments, especially if Micah Hyde makes a play like he did Saturday night with that incredible interception. Because Micah Hyde lives across the street from me, so he's somebody I know personally. And so the people in the class feel like they got to know Micah. So, Micah he almost broke a punt return for a touchdown, too. He hit his own man's foot and, tripped over it, or he would have been gone for a 90-yard touchdown run on a punt return. So these guys are texting me, Micah, all the time. It's so much fun. Anyway, um, so we want to do that. So I'm going to go into more detail in class as to what this is all about, but I wanted to give you an introduction now. Most of the time, we'll be doing short stories. Later on in the semester, we'll do some poetry, but when we do poetry, we'll be looking for what a poem means to you, the reader, not what you think the poet may have meant at the time. Not that that's irrelevant, because it certainly is relevant, but what it means to you, how it touches you, what you think about it. And sometimes you read a poem and it's like, I don't have any idea what this guy's talking about. That's okay. That's okay. That's not terrible. It's not unusual. Okay. But we're going to also give you kind of opportunities to pick some of your own poems, as well as I'll be assigning you poems, and maybe you'll pick from 7 or 8 poems to write about, and then we'll do a piece of drama at the end of the semester, and with luck, we'll be able to actually see that whole drama in class on television. Because what I have in mind, I know there is a YouTube of it that's pretty well done. Okay, and then also late in the semester, we may well have a movie that you will view, and then and it's a movie that you love, and it's a movie that you all know, um, and we'll ask you to talk about the different literary characteristics that you find in that movie, as well as the fun of the movie. So anyway, just wanted to give you a little head start. Also, keep in mind, okay, there was confusion on this last semester, and a lot of you never got it straight. Our class is period 4 and 5. We allow you to grab your lunch, bring it back to class, and eat it during period 5. But we're still in class. And so we will be doing classwork while you're eating lunch. Okay? So as you're eating lunch, be prepared to talk about it. And that's real world stuff. When you get in the professional world, you'll find that most of the time, if you do get a designated lunchtime, you will be doing it with others in your field, where you will be talking about the things that have to do with what you do. Well, that's what we're going to do during period 5. So, last semester, some people thought, well, this is our lunchtime. Why are we having class? It's not supposed to be your lunchtime. You're supposed to eat then, but it's primarily class time, and we have to use it as class time for you to be able to get college credit. So you've all earned 3 college credits already. By the end of the semester, you'll have all earned 6 college credits, okay? The typical freshman takes 15 credits a semester, so you'll have 40% of one semester done already, which means you'll be able to explore more of the things you want, or concentrate more on specific things in your major if you want to take extras, that kind of thing. So we'll talk about more of this as time goes on. But anyway, I thought it might be kind of fun to start off with me just giving you a general background on television, and we'll go forward from here. Okay, so we'll see you soon.